You're a good man. You live responsibly, you haven't done anything wrong, but you're respectful and you listen. You don't yell, you don't control, you don't hurt. You treat her well. You focus on building your career. Now you do everything that's supposed to be right. And yet, one day, she leaves. Or worse, she stays. But her heart is no longer with you. You start replaying everything in your head, every message, every silence, every moment you thought was safe. And then you begin to doubt yourself. Did I say something wrong? Was I not enough? Why did I lose her when I tried so hard to be right? You go searching for answers, but all you find are contradictions. Some tell you to be more of a man. Others say you're too masculine. Some advise you to lead. Others tell you to step back. You start to wonder, what does it even mean to be a man in today's world? The truth is, you're not weak. You're just trying to live correctly in a game where the rules have silently changed. No one told you. No one warned you that the role of a man in relationships has shifted. And because you weren't prepared, you now feel lost. You're exhausted not because you're broken, but because you've been using an old map to navigate a new terrain. What hurts the most isn't rejection. It's the feeling that you were never seen. That everything you gave was never really received. If you've ever looked in the mirror and asked yourself, "Wasn't I enough?" then this video isn't here to teach you how to become more desirable. It's here to help you understand why the game feels rigged, why your efforts seem invisible, and how to reclaim your place not by changing who you are, but by understanding what no one ever taught you to see. You did everything right, so why did she still leave? From a young age, you were taught that being a man means being strong, being the provider, putting others first. You were told that a man doesn't complain, doesn't show weakness, and never leans on anyone. You're expected to be the unshakable tree others lean on, the one steering the ship who's never allowed to be tired, the one with broad enough shoulders to carry everyone's burden. You don't get to fall apart because if you collapse, everything falls with you. And you believed that. You lived by those rules. You entered relationships with the idea that the more you carry, the more you sacrifice, the more you endure in silence, the more she would love and appreciate you. But something changed. The world no longer runs on those old instructions. She no longer needs someone to rescue her. She can stand on her own, build her own life, walk her own path without leaning on anyone. And sometimes when you try to shield her, she feels suffocated. When you silently carry the weight without speaking, she feels distant. When you give without letting her in emotionally, she feels unseen. You've been holding on to an old role, but the stage has changed. No one told you that the character you're playing is no longer the one women are drawn to. They don't want a hero. They want someone real. They don't want a statue of strength. They want a man who's steady enough to stand beside them and soft enough to let them feel his heart. You thought your sacrifice would make her stay, but now you realize you lost her not because you were weak, but because your version of strength couldn't reach her anymore. What once was your greatest advantage has now become a wall between you and the intimacy you crave. You're exhausted not because you failed, but because no one sees what you've been silently carrying. You're hurt not just because she left, but because you tried so hard to be the man you were told to be and it still wasn't enough. And now, you begin to wonder, am I truly living by what I believe, or am I still performing a role that no one asked for anymore? This isn't the moment to throw away everything you believed in. It's the moment to ask, who am I without the performance? Can I show up without the armor, without the mask, without needing to prove anything to anyone? Because only when you return to who you really are without the script Without the role, can someone finally love you for the man underneath it all? Not for how much you do, but for how fully you're willing to show up. Not being emotionally present means you'll always be locked out of her heart. Being physically present is one thing. Being emotionally present is something else entirely. Many men live beside the woman they love, eat at the same table, sleep in the same bed, say things that sound caring, and still leave her feeling empty. You're there in body, in action, in what seems like attention. But you're not fully there in feeling. And the hardest part is you don't even realize what's missing. You were raised to believe that men should be rational, that feelings are to be contained, controlled, hidden. You were taught not to show too much, not to be soft, not to be vulnerable. So you learned to swallow the words you didn't say. You learned to stay calm even when your heart was breaking. You believed that this was maturity, that silence was strength. But she doesn't want a robot who knows how to care. She doesn't want a man who stays calm to the point of being untouchable. She wants to feel you. To know that you're actually with her, not just in routine, but in emotion. When she's hurting, you don't need to fix her. You just need to sit beside her with eyes that say, "I'm not going anywhere." When she's anxious, you don't need to rescue her. You just need to stay, to hold space without rushing her out of it. When you love her but don't speak it, don't show it, don't let her in, she doesn't feel the love no matter how real it is inside you. Love without emotional connection turns into quiet distance. A kind of cold, wordless emptiness that grows between two people until it feels like you're in different rooms. You think you've been loving her deeply, honestly, but she still feels alone. Not because you don't love her, but because you haven't let her feel that love. That's the difference between effort and connection. You can do everything right, but if you're not emotionally there with her, you'll always be locked outside the one place that matters, her heart. Are you living beside the woman you love, while your heart is still somewhere she's never been allowed to enter? Are you hiding the parts of yourself you fear are too much, too soft, too messy to be loved, while missing the truth that those are the parts she longs to touch? Emotions don't make you weak. They are the bridge that lets you step into her world, not with grand gestures or perfect words, but with something far rarer, the courage to feel with her, to stay open, to be seen. If you remember one thing from this, let it be this: women don't fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with the man who makes them feel seen, understood, and not alone in what they feel. True confidence is silent but still felt. Most people think confidence is loud, that it's about walking into a room and demanding attention, that it's about asserting yourself, projecting certainty, smiling like you've already won, moving like the world belongs to you. But real confidence isn't loud. It doesn't need to perform. It's not something you put on. It's something others feel, quietly, deeply, without effort. Real confidence doesn't come from how loud your voice is, but from the weight of your presence. It's the quiet sense of gravity when a man enters the room. He doesn't rush, he doesn't pose, he doesn't try to dominate. And yet, everyone senses something grounded in him, not in how he looks, not in how he moves, but in something deeper, something that makes others slow down for just a second. Modern men don't lack muscle, they lack gravity. That inner weight, that invisible strength that makes people instinctively pay attention. Confidence is not just knowing what to say, it's knowing when silence speaks louder. But here's the mistake so many men make. They believe the louder they speak, the stronger they appear. that dominating a conversation equals being respected, that over-explaining, overreacting, or overcompensating will make others take them seriously. They don't realize the more you shout to be heard, the more others sense your fear, the more you try to prove your worth, the more they see how unsure you are inside. You think you're showing strength, but what you're actually showing is a man trying to hide how fragile he feels. You don't need to always have it together, but you do need the courage to stop turning your fear into noise, into control, into constant reaction. Ask yourself, are you trying to show you're okay? Or are you just hiding how broken you feel because maybe you don't need to prove anything? Maybe the thing that earns respect isn't how loudly you speak, but what you choose not to say. Maybe your silence is saying more than words ever could. True confidence doesn't come from not feeling fear. It comes from walking forward even while fear still lingers in your chest. Stability doesn't mean never shaking. It means choosing not to fall apart, even when you tremble. That's the kind of strength that makes people stop and pay attention, not because you demand it, but because they can't ignore it. And when you move with that kind of weight, you don't need to fight for attention. You don't need to win the spotlight. You just need to be deeply, quietly, you're unapologetically, grounded enough, real enough, steady enough. She doesn't need a leader. She needs someone who won't walk away. You might think she wants a man who leads, a man with a plan, a direction, someone strong enough to steer, protect, and take charge. But the truth is, she doesn't need a leader. She just needs someone who won't disappear mid-journey. When the arguments start, when life gets messy, when doubts creep in, what she's truly searching for is simple. Are you still here? Being a partner doesn't mean always taking the lead. It means listening to the rhythm of the one beside you and choosing not to rush ahead or fall behind. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need the patience to ask. Are you okay? And the sincerity to wait for the answer that comes not from her lips but from her heart. As a grown man, you can't keep walking ahead. You have to learn to walk beside, not with control and not by dragging and not by retreating. Do you know what hurts a woman most? It's not your weakness, it's your absence. Not when you're lost, but when you leave. She gets wounded not because you stopped loving her, but because you stopped showing up when she needed you most. You don't need to be her rock, but you do need to be someone who doesn't let go. Someone who stays when it gets hard. That's where real strength lies, not in muscles or declarations, but in the quiet courage to remain. She doesn't need a hero. She just needs a man who doesn't treat walking away like the first option. So ask yourself, are you truly walking beside her, or are you pulling her in your direction, expecting her to follow? If you want to walk with someone, you need to show up with more than just your body. You need to be present with your heart. Companionship isn't weakness. It doesn't mean abandoning your strength. It means using it differently. It means being strong enough to slow down, brave enough to stay, mature enough to say over and over, without needing grand gestures, I'm still here. And sometimes the thing that makes a woman feel safest isn't a promised future. It's your presence today. She doesn't say it, but she's always testing you. Women don't come out and ask, are you worthy? They don't need to, because they have another way of finding out. They put you in situations. They go silent when you crave reassurance. They grow cold when you seek connection. They pull back not to punish, but to see, will you get angry? Or will you remain grounded? It's not a game. It's instinct. A woman's way of testing trust without words, through the depth of your reaction. You think she's being distant, but in truth, she's asking a very simple question. When I'm not easy to love, Will you still stay? And this is where most men fail to understand. It's not that you're dismissed because you're weak. It's because when tested, you react like a boy. You sulk, you pull away. You give her the silent treatment. You walk off as if you've been wounded. In that moment, you're no longer the man she hoped for, but a grown-up body housing an unhealed wound. A mature man isn't someone who never gets hurt. He's someone who knows what's happening inside himself and chooses not to let emotion hijack his actions. You don't need to prove you're strong. You just need to not fall apart. Remember, she doesn't need perfection. She needs to know you won't collapse when the ground starts to shake. She can forgive mistakes, but she can't trust someone who becomes a different version of himself every time things get hard, unpredictable, emotionally fragile, and always ready to run. And this is where so many men break, not because they've been left, but because for the first time, they're alone with no performance, no mask, and no one else to blame. Just one raw question staring back in the silence. Who am I? Do you have the courage to stay with yourself when others walk away? Can you stand there without yelling, begging, or playing the victim? Just take a deep breath and remain as a man. Because the test isn't meant to destroy you. It's the language of intuition, a woman's way of sensing if you're real. Don't fear being tested. Listen, stay present, and stand firm. If you want to be attractive, don't reveal everything about yourself. There's something every truly magnetic man understands: he never reveals everything about himself. Not because he's hiding, not because he's playing games, but because he knows attraction doesn't come from exposure. It comes from restraint. When you share too much too soon, you think you're building connection. But in truth, you're robbing the other person of the thrill of discovery. What could have been a meaningful journey becomes a manual. And when someone believes they've already figured you out, what's left is a quiet, invisible exit. A grounded man always keeps a room within himself, one no one has the key to but him. A space not of secrets, but of substance. And from the outside, she doesn't try to barge in. She pauses. She wonders. She's drawn in not by what he says, but by what he chooses not to say. Not to create distance, but to protect depth. Because when everything is on the table, mystery evaporates, and so does desire. Vulnerability is not measured by how many stories you share. It's in the intention. It's in knowing what to reveal, when, and why. Some truths are not withheld because of fear, but because the moment isn't right, or because the bond isn't deep enough yet, or simply because they belong to you. That is your right. A mature man doesn't fear being misunderstood. He fears living a life with nothing sacred left inside. And here's where you might get it wrong. You think oversharing is honesty, but often it's just insecurity dressed up as openness. It's rushing to be accepted. It's trying to fill the silence. It's desperately trying not to be forgotten. But when your sharing isn't grounded in truth, it becomes noise, not signal. Women feel this even if they never say it. They don't need to know everything. They just need to feel that something within you runs deep enough to explore. Something that invites, not demands attention. Not so they can possess it, but so they can slowly, respectfully walk alongside it. So ask yourself this: is there a part of you even you haven't dared to look at? Is there a truth in you you keep covering up, not because it's shameful, but because it's raw? A truly attractive man isn't the best storyteller. He's the one who knows what not to tell. He doesn't rush to prove he's worthy. He knows that love isn't found in quick confessions. It's found in the shared journey toward the things we don't say right away. Remember, what makes you magnetic is not how much you give, but what you choose to keep. Because what you hold back is often the very thing that makes you unforgettable. You don't have to raise your voice to be a man. You just need gravity. There's a quiet shift happening in the world. The era of men shouting to be heard is fading. And a new era is emerging, an era where stillness carries more weight than slogans, where a calm gaze can silence a room. You don't need to raise your voice to be powerful. You just need to show up like a mountain, steady, grounded, saying nothing, but commanding attention. Real strength isn't in how loudly you speak. It's in the kind of inner order no one can shake. You don't have to lead with orders, just by example, and people will naturally want to follow. Women today aren't drawn to men who try to control. They're drawn to men who don't need to. The kind of man who knows who he is and doesn't need to win to feel worthy. The kind of man who doesn't run from his darkness, but sits with it and listens. Carl Jung once said, maturity isn't the absence of fear. It's learning to carry your darkness without letting it define you. The moment you stop trying to command others, you start to attract them. The moment you stop chasing attention, you become its center. This isn't a tactic, it's a state of being, a state that comes when you stop trying to prove who you are, because your presence is the answer. It sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? The more you try to control, the more you lose your impact. The louder you speak, the further you drift from true gravity. Influence doesn't come from volume, it comes from depth. So ask yourself honestly, are you building your own gravity, or are you borrowing strength from noise, your status, your appearance, your sharp tone, just to mask the fear of being invisible? A truly magnetic man doesn't force others to follow. He lives with depth, authenticity, and stillness that others want to step into. He doesn't chase influence. His very being is influential. Remember, this maturity isn't about how often you win. It's about how deeply others can see themselves in you. And that only happens when you stop trying to be someone else. You just are. And that is what makes you unforgettable. Don't wait to be chosen. Learn to choose yourself. You've spent so much time trying to earn it, validation, love, approval. You tried to be good enough, strong enough, worthy enough to be kept, wanted, chosen. But in the end, what you truly need isn't someone else's choice. It's your own. The world has changed. Women have changed. Standards have changed. Roles have shifted. But one thing has never changed: if you don't know who you are, you'll always end up playing a role someone else wrote, and then you'll blame life for not giving you a better script. The truth is, no one owes it to you to choose you if you haven't dared to choose yourself first. Real power begins the moment you stop chasing approval, when you stop trying to fit into what others need, and start standing in who you really are. Something shifts. You no longer ask for a seat at the table. You become the table. And in that moment, you're no longer auditioning. You're rewriting the story. Ask yourself, if today you had the chance to rewrite your role in life, what would you put on the first page? The man who was chosen, or the man who chose himself? If this video felt like someone finally said what you never dared to say out loud, maybe you found the right place. This channel isn't for everyone. It's for the few men who are learning to live honestly, day by day, step by step. No more pretending, no more performance.